Well, hey everybody, so excited that you've jumped into a message-based group. For the next 10 weeks, we're going to journey through the book of 1 John. Now, if it's your first time, I understand you might be a little nervous or maybe not really sure what to expect. So I hope you'll just relax and jump into the conversation and just see what God might want to do in your life and in these relationships over the next few weeks. Now, if you're returning to message-based group again, well, welcome back. And you know from experience that you'll get the most out of the next 10 weeks by listening and engaging with the message each week, by bringing your own insights, your questions, and even your observations into the group discussion. Now, some weeks you might start your group by just simply asking, "So what did you think of the message this week?" And that question alone will be enough to guide your entire conversation. Other weeks you might need some of the questions that we actually provide for you as a prompt. Just try to keep in mind a couple of things. One, the goal in your group is not to get through all of the material. It's not to cover all of the questions in the conversation guide. The goal is for you to learn from one another and solidify any steps you need to take. Two, also keep in mind that your group leaders are not necessarily teachers. And they're not necessarily people who have all of the answers. They are there to make sure you feel welcome, to guide the conversation, to keep you on track, make sure everyone is heard, and at times to point you to additional resources. Now, the first video is always a little bit longer, as we just want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the text that we're diving into. So, 1 John is written by, yes, John. He's one of the selected 12 disciples. He's really important because he saw Jesus, he talked with Jesus, he had experiences with Jesus for at least 3 years that we know of. He was a close friend of Jesus. And he's writing to what I think is maybe a group of churches, maybe it's one church in particular, but it would only take you about 15 to 20 minutes to read this entire letter. And I'll be honest and say, like, every time I read it, it just feels so unorganized to me. It's like he has ideas he wants to communicate, but he didn't outline it. He just goes back and forth to different themes the entire time. But we have to give a minute to understanding what it is that prompts John to write this to begin with. Now, the churches have gone through what looks like a crisis of false teaching, namely called Gnosticism. And reminder, you should have already listened to the message, so I won't dive into it too much, but at its core, Gnosticism is kind of hard to define, but it's really about separating the physical and the spiritual. Meaning Jesus was only a man who came to impart special knowledge and not to actually save us from sin. So this teaching was all about how we need to have a higher and a deeper and a more privileged and evolved information, and it could actually be found apart from God, which I find to be so relevant to where we find ourselves today. It's also why I believe John chooses as his theme to the entire book, again, this is my opinion, this phrase, and it's what we've named our series. This is how we know. I mean, he wants the people and the churches to be clear and to be certain and to be confident that there are things that they believe that can absolutely be trusted. Matter of fact, I would encourage you to read the entire book of 1 John and to actually note all of the places where he uses this phrase. And even though maybe he doesn't use that phrase in the opening verses, I think the idea is there. And the idea John is communicating from the beginning is this: I want you to know that you can trust what I am saying and what I've written. I want you to have confidence in this message. And this is how you know that you can. And what John unrolls at that point is all about his first-hand encounter with Jesus. Now, I'm not going to go back over all of that. I'm going to kick it to you all to continue the conversation. And I think there's plenty to talk about here. But please, get to the punchline, like the conclusion, or what maybe we should just call the next steps of week 1, where I landed, and I'll put in the form of a question to leave you with, which is this: how do you know that you've heard, seen, and had an encounter with Jesus? So glad you all made it to the group. Enjoy the conversation.